And I'm sure no intelligent white person watching this show, or no intelligent white man in his or her right white mind, want black boys and black girls marrying their white sons and daughters, and in return introducing their grandchildren as half-brown, kinky-haired black people.
I wouldn't object to that.
Well, you wouldn't, but a lot of them would.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people... No, this is the point.
What I'm trying to say is this. And you don't have it. You say you don't, but you don't have it. You really ain't going to have it. You're on the show, and you got to say that. But
that's not true.
Why would you want to do that?
Because I don't think I'm any different from you see.
Yeah, we much different.
I mean, I think society's made us different.
You know we're different. We're all together.
But society's made us different.
No, not society. God made us different.
No, we're just human beings. He made all of us.
We all, listen, bluebirds fly with bluebirds, red birds want to be with red birds. Listen, tell me when I'm wrong. Pigeons want to be with pigeons.
But
tell me when I'm wrong. We should have more, they don't have intelligence, but yet they stay together. We should have more intelligence than them, right?
So let's just kind of start back in the mid-20th century. The UN declared that, there's no such thing as any real genetic differences between races. All that we see is just, it's all just a visual thing. We look different, but on the inside we're all exactly the same. And they kind of just issued that statement, just, I guess, arbitrarily or according to the scientists that they happened to have on board at that time. The thing is, they hadn't even decoded the human genome by that point. So now we have decoded the human genome, and once we did that, we also went and decoded Neanderthal human genome and measuring more and more humans' genomes, and now we start to see the apparent differences. So a recent discovery, well, fairly recent in the past decade, has been that non-Africans, ironically described as modern humans by most of the press reports that released this, non-Africans interbred with Neanderthals. So we actually have Neanderthal DNA. I know I myself, I've got about 4 to 5% Neanderthal DNA, so does the average European. That's kind of like the equivalent of having a great-great-grandfather who was a Neanderthal, right? So we have Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthals had larger brain capacity. They had different body build. They had different immune systems. According to many of the depictions that I've seen, they had fair skin, fair hair, blue eyes, and they split off from a common ancestor with Africans 500,000 years ago and were considered to be a different species until they realized that they'd interbred with us. But you can still reasonably consider them to be a different species, because, for example, we consider polar bears and grizzly bears to be different species, yet they're able to interbreed to produce offspring that are fertile. So, and they split off about 100,000 years ago. So it's very reasonable to consider that Neanderthals were a separate species from Africans. And anyway, so yes, our ancestors interbred with Neanderthals, so we are effectively a hybridized species. Non-Africans are hybridized with Neanderthals. So that in itself makes us different from sub-Saharan Africans, blatantly. And it's actually, I watched one of the first press reports on this, it's actually on YouTube, and, I was just researching and I watched it, and the guy's face, the scientist's face who discovered this information and actually did the DNA test, he was terrified revealing this information. I think he thought he was going to get fired or something, because he knew that what he was revealing is that there is a distinct genetic difference between sub-Saharan Africans and all other people that we consider to be humans on Earth. So anyhow, that's kind of mainstream now. The mainstream press reported on this, and most people kind of know that, yeah, we have Neanderthal DNA, etc. What a lot of people don't realize, and this came out more recently, is that some Central Africans, and this is where the black slaves were taken from in West Africa, they actually hybridized, they mated 35,000 years ago. They mated with another species that split off from our common ancestor 700,000 years ago within Africa. So, and honestly, like this other species looks like a hairless gorilla that can walk on its hind legs, basically. So just to be frank, I mean, they hybridized with a completely different species to what we hybridized with. So arguably, you know, we could arguably be considered different species. This is not to mention the amount of separate evolution that we've gone through individually, away from them. And but we are definitely, by any standard of the imagination, different subspecies. You know, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I've tried coaxing this out of a few different scientists, and they tend to just kind of, you know, silently give a nod of the head without actually saying it, because it's so unpolitically correct that you just can't say, look, there are different subspecies here. But I thought it was particularly funny. There's this guy on Twitter I'm following, he's a Chinese guy, and every now and again he tweets, Chinese women, do not mate with other species. It ruins integrity of Chinese species. You know, so I think that the Chinese, and I think there are actually studies showing this when surveying Chinese anthropologists and things, the Chinese certainly recognize the genetic reality of race. Race is literally just a euphemism for the scientific term subspecies. So yes, we are multiple different subspecies, and some of the subspecies are further away from each other genetically than others. And we can definitely say there is a bigger gap between sub-Saharan Africans and any non-African population than between any non-African populations. For example, Chinese and Europeans are actually far, far more similar genetically than Europeans and sub-Saharan Africans or Chinese and sub-Saharan Africans. So sub-Saharan Africans are really the most separate group genetically from all other humans, and that's probably because they didn't interbreed with the same Neanderthals that we interbred with, and they actually interbred with a completely different hominid species that doesn't even have a name yet. The numbers I've mentioned are like completely solid and in the papers, which is that 35,000 years ago, Central Sub-Saharan Africans interbred with another species, but with a hominid species that split off from our common ancestor 700,000 years ago. So just to put that in perspective, that's shortly after we first learned how to use fire. Okay. So yeah, this is totally established, and it's published in very well-recognized scientific journals. So thanks for listening. I'll wrap that up there. I know people often say, oh, you're saying really off-the-wall things, but hey, sometimes reality is stranger than fiction, and this is the reality of the situation.
Every intelligent person wants his child to look like him. I'm sad because I want to blot out my race and lose my beautiful identity. Chinese love Chinese. They love the little slanted-eyed, pretty brown-skinned babies. Pakistanis love their culture. Jewish people love their culture. A lot of Catholics don't want to marry number Catholics. They want the religion to stay the same. Who want to spot up yourself and kill your race? You're a hater of your people if you don't want to stay who you are. You shame what God made you. God didn't make no mistake when he made us all like we were.
I think that's a philosophy of despair.
Despair.
I really do.
It ain't no despair.
Number
one, can't no woman. Let me tell you something. I want to tell you. Listen, no woman on this whole earth, not even a black woman in Muslim countries, can please me and cook for me and socialize and talk to me like my American black woman. No woman, at last, is a white woman, can really identify with me and my feelings and the way I act and the way I talk. And you can't take no Chinese man and give him no Puerto Rican woman and holler about we're in love and you emotionally in love and physically, but really they're not happy because she's going to hear some Puerto Rican music, he's going to hear some Chinese music, and they're going to be clashing all the time. It's just nature. You can do what you want, but it's nature to want to be with your own. I want to be with my own. I love my people.